is now a small company of Guyanese females being in the process of bidding for an oil block. And so it to my mind broadens the level of interaction, and it also tends, I believe, to bring CARICOM into the mix. So CARICOM for me is important because what we would see, and I believe that the final judgment of the ICJ will be in Ghana's favor. The issue of compliance, as we mentioned, is going to be important. And therefore, the alliances which we develop and the sustained engagement, not only with CARICOM, but with our neighbors in the hemisphere, is going to be important. Now, I've seen, and this may be just tangential to the discourse, I've seen where the CARICOM, through Prime Minister Gonzalez, is the current pro tempore chairman of CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. That gives us another forum, to my mind, for engagement and for alliance building. And therefore, I think it is important that at this stage, especially in relation to the new oil, the thinking on oil, the new potential for a CARICOM energy policy that would reduce the dependence on one country for Petro-Caribbean, the need for more strength in our united effort, brings to my mind the need for all hands on board approach. And and therefore, I think that CARICOM is a very important ally, and the states of the hemisphere must also be approached vigorously in this effort to support, the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Guyana.
And what we want to do now, yes, Jomo, go ahead. Yes,
yeah. There's another point I think which is critical. To what extent, and I'm not sure, we haven't raised this yet, but I want to throw this in the mix. Yes. To what extent is Venezuela's rhetoric, the temperature, to what extent is that rising because of the tremendous stranglehold which the American embargo is having on that country? I mean, Venezuela, like Guyana, is an enormously resourceful country, tremendous resource, tremendous potential to take care of their citizens. I mean, Guyana has a very small population of less than 1 million. Venezuela has like about 26 million. But both countries, they have land space and they have resources. But the Americans have endeavored to strangle these countries. I mean, you go back to the Nixon-Kissinger theory of we are going to make these countries cream. And they are doing it. They have been doing it with Cuba. They are doing it with Venezuela. And that itself is creating some tension in the region, because I know that Professor Curtin lays out eloquently the long-standing points of intervention, of aggression, of claims by the Venezuelans going all the way back. And he premised some of them beginning like in 1962. So that's over 60 years now. But I'm saying the rise may well be, because they say that we say colloquially, and I'm sure probably across the region, that pressure causes pipe to burst. So the more the pressure comes up, the more people are trying to find ways to survive and to make sure if the project of the state is to make people feel safer, make them feel secure, make their life a little better. One of the things I think that we need to begin to talk, in addition to talking about the Caribbean being a zone of peace and remaining a zone of peace, is to insist in CARICOM, in Guyana, and every place else, for the right to non-interference in internal affairs, the right to sovereignty, and so on and so forth. Because if these countries have a chance to do as they would want to do in terms of developing economically and socially on the path of development that they choose for themselves, I think we may have less, excuse me, of the kind of conflicts that we are seeing emerging. I just wanted to put that in.
Yeah, your thoughts on that in respect of that geopolitical piece there, what America has been doing to Venezuela in respect of that embargo, because for some reason they're not satisfied by the decisions, the internal decisions of the Venezuelan people as to who they elect as their leaders. That is why we have that embargo in place. And of course, they were upset that Venezuela decided to nationalize their own resources. That's another factor there as well. So, Professor Curtin or Rear Admiral, who wants to go first?
Well, let me say that I agree with that, with the concept of non-interference in internal affairs of a sovereign state. I also would like to put on the table the view that there are two dimensions. We must have internal unity, so a level of cohesion in a country like Guyana, and also in all the countries in the region, I must say, that there's an engagement of its people, so that that clear level of unity is established very early. Engagement, inclusiveness is, to my mind, an important component. And then the next level, indeed, is our neighbors, our CARICOM brother and sister states, which have to be part of this levels, these new levels of engagement. And so that in a united way, we can, in some ways, attempt to resist that kind of movement to deter or diminish self-determination. And so it is within that kind of unity concept that I believe CARICOM and Guyana can coalesce around that issue. Internal unity, meaning domestically in the state, having people engaged. This can't be a partisan engagement, but rather broadly national. In a level of CARICOM, each of those states, I believe, should seek the kind of domestic unity that is important. And then together as nation states, we must move to ensure that CARICOM, because I've seen where we've done in 1972, 4 states of the region in the midst of the Cold War.
Exactly.
Deal with, have reduced or remove isolationism from our context by
Yes.
Cuba, by
Exactly.
recognizing Cuba.
Indeed.
And why is it now not possible for us to unite in this kind of approach that could say to other states that, look, we are one, and therefore we demand the kind of independence, which is not flag independence only, but the unity among our regional brothers and sisters. That's my view.
Rear Admiral?
I can't agree more with both Dr. Curtin and our legal colleague here. Can't agree more with that. I believe that unity, the CARICOM unity, has to spring from CARICOM. Can spring from the CARICOM people and spring from the CARICOM leaders. As Professor Courtney mentioned, we did it well in 1972 and other parts and other times within our region. I think that in some sense, the type of economies that we manage within CARICOM might be contributing. The way we manage our economies might be contributing to some of the weaknesses that we were exposed to, and perhaps the fears of national governments in relation to their political offices, and as an extension to that, maybe for some bilateral deals. I say this because when we look within the regime of, let's say, climate adaptation financing, where there may be a common position by CARICOM, and when we get to the Conference of the Parties, those yearly conferences, a lot of side bilateral deals are made, and the CARICOM position is dwindled and dwindled away. So I think we need some real strong commitment, regional leaders with commitment to domestic unity, as I was said, and to regional unity. And CARICOM has an important vote in the UN. It's not a CARICOM vote. We're talking about 13 nations voting, and those votes are required by many of the countries to pass a number of major issues within the United Nations. We have to monetize that voting block more successfully. We have to monetize it, and to use that term, we have to let it be leveraged even better for our CARICOM brothers and sisters. So I do agree, domestic unity, regional unity. If we hold one head as CARICOM, then we could push back against these gigantic forces. These gigantic forces are not going to go away. It's a condition of the geopolitics. Powerful nations and great nations tend to take advantage of smaller nations. It's a human nature issue, and the cost of being a developed country is very high. The cost of global leadership is very high. The price that Americans pay for the security in America is very high. If you look at the cost outside of America. So if I tell my American friends, I say, well, you know the cost of this freedom you're talking about? I don't know if it's a right cost, but the human cost is very high. People die across the world for this freedom. So we have to look at it in the context of CARICOM. What are we prepared to give up? What is our final position? In fact, what are the national aspirations of the CARICOM people? Perhaps we need to revisit the CARICOM treaty. What are the national aspirations? The things that we all agree on, the things that all our parliaments will agree on and pass legislation to support. So any part of the globe we go, there is a CARICOM position on these specific issues, because they represent our national aspirations. And by extension becomes our national interests. And by extension becomes our national values as CARICOM nations. Once we could agree on that, then there are other room for bilaterals that do not affect the fundamentals of the CARICOM people, which could be anchored on national aspiration to people. I lived in Brazil for 4.5 years. I studied there, nautical science. That's my first foray into studying outside of high school when I joined the Defense Force. And the Brazilians taught us what were their national aspirations, irrespective of the government in power. Those national aspirations were enshrined in their constitution. I'm saying CARICOM can go that route. CARICOM can look at that route and for the second time or third time, think strongly about the CARICOM parliament, where legislation is made, and that strengthens integration. CARICOM should not shy away from a CARICOM parliament. That discussion and conversation needs to go back on the table. Within the CARICOM region, we should have a CARICOM parliament where legislation is being made that strengthens our relations. So there's so much that can be done in CARICOM that would make us a formidable force against these gigantic actors that we'll always have in the region. And I think if we do that, complementing what has been said, I think we'll be a stronger force and a more cohesive force and a more representative force for our people within the region.
Let me bring back all of the panelists here for some viewer comments now. Nigel Gravesandy is saying, thank you for this program on the Venezuela-Guyana territorial controversy. Grateful if the panelists can comment on the strategic importance of Guyana engaging Brazil, which shares borders with both countries, and its historical view of Venezuela's expansionist desires. Professor Curtin?
Okay, well, in the first instance, one has to recognize that Brazil has borders with 10 countries, most of South America except Chile and Ecuador. It has a history of settlement of borders juridically, and has since 1904, when the borders were with British Guyana were settled, has always talked about and acted in relation to the inviolability and the sanctity of borders. In my view, Brazil has looked at the border issue, and I think Dr. Bess has alluded to this, that one of Brazil's concerns is if Venezuela to annex that part of Guyana, then its borders with Guyana, Brazil's borders with Guyana, would have to be reworked. And I think that is one of the fundamental questions for the Brazilian government and people. Not the question, that's the fundamental concerns, that they would not be willing to withdraw any border, having borders already been settled by judicial agreement. Now, I believe also that Brazil Guyana and Brazil should have a more robust relationship in the sense that I think that the trajectory of the relationship has been reduced over the last couple of years. And as I can see here, we don't even have an ambassador in that important capital. Now, my view is that given the importance of this alliance, we've seen across the directorates in Brazil, the military, and since 1985, the civilian regime types, there's been that consistency. Even at times when I remember my research indicated that in 1975, Guyana agreed for Cuban troops to land here en route to Angola in the struggle for Angola's independence. There was concern by the Brazilian military about potentially a Cuban presence. But that never changed, to my mind, for my research, Brazil's support for Guyana in the Venezuela controversy. So that's when I believe that indeed there must be some more robust engagements with our neighbor and countries in South America, which Brazil, I think, has had some alliances with. So in terms of that country as a counterweight to Venezuelan aggression, I think it could act as that nation state that could continue to be a strong counterweight, in spite of people arguing that Maduro and President Lula have some form of ideological affinity. But I believe that Brazil has not changed its position in relation to the sanctity of borders. Mm-hmm. So I would recommend for Guyana an enhanced relationship with Brazil, which could help us with some of the South American states, because Colombia is also a state that we need to interact with more robustly. They have a similar problem with Venezuela on borders, so that the South American alliance led by Brazil is one that I think is recommended.
Rear Admiral, I suppose you endorse the sentiments here.
Yes, I do endorse the sentiments and positions by Professor Curtin. It is important for us to maintain and enhance those relations. We've always had them with Brazil. I also recognize the importance of Brazilian leadership in the continent. I think Brazilian foreign policy has been very robust and consistent over the decades. They've demonstrated that significantly at various fora, particularly the United Nations. We have the BRICS, where there's a leading force in the BRICS formation. In the G77 plus China, Brazil is a very strong force. So it's not only regional, it's also international. So I do agree that enhancing our diplomatic and economic relations with Brazil is very important. Brazil is also a major oil producer. So we have opportunities for synergies also with Brazil. So we can't lose but gain from enhancing our diplomatic and economic relations with Brazil. And I believe Brazil is ready to continue that enhancement. In fact, we have a bridge, the bridge over the Takutu River, that's border river between Guyana and Brazil. That bridge was constructed under the Lula government. It's a bridge of friendship. So Brazil is ready and willing, and I think Guyana just have to continue to enhance those relationships. And it is best poised right now to lead the entire Latin American effort. If you look at the economics of the situation and the politics of Latin America, Brazil is best poised to lead, and we expect them to lead, and we should really enhance our relationship with Brazil. I do agree.
Yep, absolutely. Gentlemen, this has been such an important conversation, very informative in respect of how we are to proceed with this as CARICOM. But what we will do, we will take a quick break and come back for the final segment of the program, where I would give you an opportunity for some wrap-up comments. So please stand by for that.
Hello, everyone. I am Chantal McGuire, the local bred Grenadian actuary and asset liability management expert. Are you satisfied with your current finances? Are you curious and constantly looking for ways to make additional income? Join me on the Bob Report as we strive to empower you, a valued audience, to become more financially literate and help evolve Grenadians into a mindset that's investment-focused and entrepreneurial. Literacy is about freedom. It's about being able to control your money and not letting your money control you. It's about foresight for a brighter future. Our core mission is to promote financial literacy and share money-generating opportunities for everyone. Join us on the last Sunday of every month, starting July 30th, as we strive to provide the keys to financial freedom.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bob Report. We go there.
Should your loved ones pass